Hey everyone, my name is Charles O, Agency Community Manager here at WP Engine, and I'm thrilled to kick off this next session. If you work at or with agencies, you've probably noticed how rapidly the landscape is evolving. While it is an exciting time for agencies, things like AI, rapidly evolving client expectations and hiring trends, means that staying ahead takes more than intuition. It requires real insight. And that's why we're lucky to have the expert when it comes to agency questions and answers, Nicholas Petroski. Nicholas is the founder of Promethean Research, a firm that's quickly become the go-to source for digital agency trends and growth strategies. For nearly a decade, he's been helping agency leaders make smarter decisions with clear, research-backed insights. He's also a longtime Flywheel customer, a talented woodworker, and a brand new one, the Agency Oracle of Ohio. Today, he'll be unveiling the latest findings for Promethean's 2025 State of Digital Services Report, and is packed with trends, tactics, and takeaways for any agency looking to grow smarter in 2025 and beyond. And with that, please help me welcome Nicholas Petroski.
Thanks so much. That's a sick intro. I appreciate that. Welcome to Agency Trends 2025. As Charles said, the agency world has changed dramatically over the last few years, and this has had massive impacts on devs, designers, and marketers as a whole. Today, I'm going to detail why agencies exist in the first place. I'm going to cover some of what the market looks like today, and then dive into 3 of the major trends that are reshaping the future of digital agencies. If you like this kind of industry research, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I post a bunch over there. Otherwise, I have a newsletter that I write every 2 weeks where I do a deep dive into a specific agency topic, and I post all of my new research and findings there. This presentation is based on our surveys and consulting work and observational research that we've done over the last decade. The trend portion of it, though, that's based on our most recent survey of 151 digital agencies in February of this year. As you'll see in the coming slides, the majority of the industry is made up of what we call small and studio-sized agencies. These are shops with fewer than 25 full-time employees. So most of the respondents to our surveys are from founders, owners, or partners, which gives us a really solid vantage point for understanding what drives agency leadership teams. Before we get into why agencies exist, we need to define what they are. At their core, they're a professional service firm. They offer digital services to other companies. We can loosely bucket these into 3 main categories: development, design, and marketing. But in practice, there's a ton of overlap. And if you take a standard web dev shop, for example, they'll typically offer a few dev services, but it's also super common for them to include some design and marketing services as well. Because there's so much of this overlap, we have to define a digital agency as a professional service firm that offers at least some mix of the services on the slide here. So with definitions out of the way, we can finally get to the good stuff. I'm going to be running through why agencies exist in the first place, then a description, like I said, of the current market, and finally 3 of those key trends that are shaping the future of digital agencies. Digital agencies really became a thing during the 90s as the internet itself began to take off. Businesses realized that they could sell more widgets with a web presence, and the people who could make that happen started leaving the web teams that they ran inside traditional ad agencies and started to, create some of the first digital agencies. The dot-com boom really accelerated this until the bubble burst in 2000, but brands already had that taste of what digital could do, and they knew that agencies were the key to unlocking it. This was the first example of a new technology creating business demand for services from digital agencies. As you'll see throughout this section, this is the key reason why digital agencies exist, and it still impacts the industry today. The new tech that heralded Web 2.0 was a massive driver of agency growth during the early 2000s. Platforms like Blogger, WordPress, Typepad, they allowed agencies to offer content marketing and blogging services. Facebook's launch and rapid expansion, that revolutionized digital marketing by making social media valuable to businesses. YouTube established video as another viable marketing channel and allowed agencies to leverage video on a massive scale. Collectively, these social techs expanded agency offerings and fundamentally changed how digital agencies delivered value. Again, this was another decade where new tech provided fuel to growing existing agencies, and it also spawned thousands of new ones. Between 2010 and 2020, several new technologies emerged that massively impacted digital agencies. This is where like the dev, design, and marketing, where they truly began to mix, since each discipline was needed to be successful here. The rise of smartphones and tablets, that created demand for responsive web design and apps. Platforms like HubSpot, Marketo, and Pardot, they became essential agency tools for automating marketing tasks. And then there was programmatic advertising that emerged and changed how brands bought ads. Finally, everything from the 90s and 2000s, that was all still growing. So a ton of businesses were still building their first sites, while many were doing full site redesigns. Blogging experienced massive growth, social was everywhere, and video exploded with live streaming and television coming to the web. All these tech advancements, again, made it almost impossible to fail at growing an agency. Growth was just everywhere. There was so much demand during this time frame. And then 2020 hit. You had to hit it eventually, right? Spending came to a halt, an absolute standstill in the first half of that year. Projects were paused, sales pipelines went dry, and layoffs were common. They were all over the place. Then, midway through the year, the US government launched their PPP and EIDL programs. These combined pumped about $1 trillion into the US economy. That's with a T. That, plus the Fed funds rate of 0%, threw the economy into absolute overdrive. The world was still in lockdown, and that meant if brands were going to be successful and survive, they had to do it digitally. So they went super hard into all of the digital investments that they had essentially laid out for the next 4 years. They brought it all into 2021. Digital agencies of all kinds rode this renewed wave, with many growing faster than ever. The major challenge owners faced in early 2022 was competing with product companies for talent. We got some vaccines and the world reopened that year, but inflation and interest rates began to rise with it. And then brands pulled back spending. While 2022 started with agencies fighting over talent, it ended with shops staring down weak sales pipelines. And that weakness continued throughout 2023. And we didn't see it stabilize for many until partially through 2024. Layoffs and downsizing were commonplace again. This was unique because this was the first time in 20 some years, maybe longer, where new tech wasn't the key driver of agency growth. Agencies were at the mercy of general economic conditions, for better or worse, and not even the introduction of a new tech like AI could spark life into a tough agency market. So now that we know why agencies exist and how we got here, let's cover what the market looks like today. We've counted over 100,000 digital agencies worldwide. This industry is comprised of a huge number of relatively small shops. And 91% have fewer than 50 full-time employees, and 64% have fewer than 10. So the average size of a digital agency is absolutely tiny relative to the size of clients that they serve. When we look at how agencies operate, we can divide them into 4 main functional groups. You have support, RevGen, production, and leadership. Support is everything related to facilitating the other groups. This includes things like accounting, human resources, legal, etc., all that kind of stuff. It's essentially, you can think of it as the foundational linking layer that makes everything else work. RevGen activities include all of the tasks and roles related to sales, marketing, account management, and business development. Production activities are all those related to actually delivering value to the client. And then finally, leadership is concerned with defining vision and guiding the agency towards it. In terms of headcount, production teams, they make up about 2/5 of the agency. And there are a number of ways to structure them within this segment. We're not going to get into all those now, but this 2/5 number is going to be important later when we start digging into how AI is impacting agencies. There's a lot more info on other agency metrics in our industry report that didn't fit into this time frame. So feel free to screenshot that QR code and check it out later. But this growth rate chart, this should give everyone a really good idea of where we stand today. So overall, digital agencies tend to grow slightly faster than other industries. The average annual growth rate for a digital agency in our surveys over the last 5 years has been 12%. The average annual growth rate for all US publicly traded sectors has been about 10%. So agencies are growing about 2% faster. Taking a look at the chart, we can see the tech story from the first section really play out in these growth rates. Agencies grew at a pretty stable rate from 2015 to 2019, and then there was that dip in 2020. And then in 2021, average growth skyrocketed. That was due to that, again, enormous pull forward in demand for digital transformation solutions. In 22, growth slowed back down to average. And then in 2023, it fell even further. Our latest figure for 24's average growth rate was just 5%. So while agencies do tend to grow faster than average, the last few years have not been kind to this space. I think this is a key reason why the hiring picture has been so challenging lately. Now that we know where the industry stands, we can shift our focus to the future and discuss 3 of the major trends that are reshaping the industry. The first and largest trend we cover is how agencies are making use of AI. This includes getting something of value out of it, plus integrating it into their workflows. Here we have 2 charts showing how AI implementation has changed in recent years. At the start of 24, we saw a major shift out of that bottom, unsure, don't plan to segment, and into that currently implementing and already implemented segments. This is what we would expect to see as agencies integrate a new tech into their workflows. This year, however, we saw a big shift back into the unsure, don't plan to bucket. Right now, a third of the industry is essentially at step 1 of implementing AI. And this is a massive departure from the rhetoric that's out there about everybody using it and it killing a bunch of jobs. From the comments in our latest survey, it seems like most leaders are expecting AI to be the major force this year. But there was really limited success in fully integrating it into workflows. It's obviously having an impact. We can't deny that. But adoption is distinctly slower than what I expected 2 years ago. So let's explore how this impacts agencies. Here's a look at how a typical 25-employee agency is structured. There's a few leadership roles, 1 to 3 RevGen roles, a team of employees dedicated to producing the actual value that the RevGen team sells, and then a few support roles. The largest area for AI to impact is obviously in production, and that's exactly where we're seeing it. Many devs, marketers, and designers are using it to be more efficient. Our data shows that 48% of agencies have already implemented AI into their copywriting. And that has a huge impact on site content, email marketing, sales copy, and other content-related activities. We saw the least progress in using AI for video creation. I think it's really more due to the quality of the tools, though, than a lack of interest from agencies. If you think about which tools came online first and which were more mature first, it was the content ones, it was the copy ones. We're just now with Sora getting to that space where convincing video is actually usable. So I would expect this video to play a little catch up, even if it doesn't catch up as fast as maybe it should. As AI develops, we expect to see more gains throughout production teams and then significant efficiency gains in the support roles. The main story, if we sum it all up, the main story is there's a lot of room left to run with implementing AI in digital agencies. The next big trend we're watching is the superiority of specialists. Here, we have the average revenue growth rate for agencies that identify as specialists or generalists based on the industries they serve, the services they offer, or both. What we found over the last few years is agencies that specialize are continually growing faster than agencies that don't. Up through 2021, we saw this relatively slow but really consistent shift every year towards specialization. At that point, about half the agencies in our surveys were specialists. In 22, we saw a massive jump in agencies specializing. And this continued in 23 and stayed high in 24. And currently, 84% of shops identify as specialists in our surveys. Agencies leaders seem to have caught on that specializing means faster growth, and many agency leaders are looking for faster growth. For the agency itself to specialize, it needs to hire talent that has experience in that specialty. This means that employees with experience in specific technologies, tools, and industries will be more valuable to agencies going forward. The third major trend we're seeing is a massive shift in how agencies are structured. We analyzed over 1,000 agencies and plotted who typically handles each role. If it's done by an owner or partner, there's a circle. If that role is typically filled by an employee, there's a star, and there's a diamond if it's outsourced to a contractor. Historically, we saw the most contractor use in value delivery roles at larger agencies. This last year, we saw a massive jump in contractor usage, especially at smaller agencies. Today, we estimate that a third of the typical production team at an agency is comprised of contractors. It adds flexibility, but it also limits margins, since contractors are typically more expensive than a full-time employee. With that said, we see many agency leaders willing to make that trade-off today, and I expect to see this trend toward more contractors continue while sales still remain challenging. When taken together, these trends paint a distinctly different picture of what the future agency looks like. As AI matures, it could do two key things. One, it'll probably make current teams more efficient. They'll be able to do more work for more clients in a given time frame. Two, it could allow sub-performing teams to level up their quality. And this could result in a market that's more competitive as brands have more higher quality options to choose from. That flows right into the specialization trend. As more shops are able to do more things, being a specialist will be even more important. We're already seeing shops hyper niche into tiny but underserved markets. And I think the smaller an agency is, they have a distinct advantage. Our research shows that agencies that quickly respond to market demands grow faster. And smaller, more nimble agencies can respond better to these shifts. Finally, the growth in contractor use continues. We could easily see agencies that are made up of a few highly specialized production employees who work with a large number of contractors. Communication and async work will play a huge part here. So taken together, the future looks like a smaller, more specialized agency augmented heavily by AI and specialized contractors. Now, I do think we have time for a few questions. And while we're getting that set up, I want to point everyone to our research shop where we have a number of our reports available in case you'd like to dig a little deeper into what makes this industry tick. We do have a discount code. It'll take 20% off that latest State of Digital Services report. And a little pro tip, you can very easily send this over to a manager or agency leader, have them put it on a company card, and they will appreciate the initiative. So with that, what questions could I answer?
Hey, thanks for that, Nick. I have one. Talking about AI, let's just start there. Let's start with the big one, AI. As you mentioned, AI is shaking up everything from, how websites get built to how we're thinking about SEO and online marketing. And as you mentioned, it has impacts on like areas like support and other areas for agencies. So, but my question is, in your view, is AI now a must-have for agencies, or is there still room to win without it?
There's this weird divide that we've started seeing between the agencies that were really able to integrate it early on and the ones that weren't. And the ones that could integrate it early on were the ones that were kind of already doing better from the start. They could dedicate talent to it. They could say, hey, take 10% of your week and just mess around with it, play with AI, see what you could do, experiment with it, try stuff, get your hands dirty. And if you can do a site faster or cheaper or better than someone else because you're using that new technology, I think you kind of gotta. Maybe down the line, there's this like handcrafted artisanal HTML website, right? Like maybe that's a thing, but right now, I think you got to learn how to use the tool.
I love that. Actually going in more into that, we're talking about, the agencies that tend to succeed are the ones that kind of had the room to play around with it. Would you say that, especially with agencies like trying to do more with less, and especially with agencies moving to more of a modular model, what are some things that those specialists, or even teams that are using AI now, what are some things that they can do to stay competitive, stay top of mind, and actually land consistent work with that?
The vast majority of fast-growing agencies grow through relationships. It's building relationships, it's nurturing relationships with current clients, with referrals, with partners, with past clients. That is the thing that there's a large trust barrier to overcome, especially when you're doing dev work or design work at an enterprise or a large company scale. If you've already done a project with them or someone that they trust, getting in the door through that vector is a heck of a lot more sustainable and more likely to turn into something than going in cold with, an email blast to 800,000 people. Like it's night and day different. So the challenge with that is you have to be active about it. You can't just sit around and wait for referrals to come through. You actually have to go out and say, hey, I know we did really great work for you. Is there anybody you know that you could put me in touch with that I can do really great work for? See if I could help them. Hey, we just launched this new service line. We've been experimenting with it and we've seen it do really well for these kind of clients. Do you know any of those kind of clients? Like having those conversations in your strategy sessions, in your review calls. I had a client that I was helping with this where they talked about the point of peak happiness. Like identifying where in the agency, like customer journey is that point of peak happiness. And that's the point where you ask for a referral. So like usually it's not at the end of the project. It's not usually like a month after delivery. So find where that is and start asking proactively at that point. I think that alone is enough to grow a shop.
I love that. Now, I'm curious with, clearly you spend a lot of time in the data. And I know from all the interviews and research and conversations that you've had with agency leaders, I'm curious, did anything stick out to you? Were there anything that came up in those interviews that just surprised you? Or maybe you felt like it was a signal worth exploring?
I'm still really interested in this shift to contractors. I started seeing this trend emerge maybe 2 or 3 years ago when I had a client that, say 2021, they were maybe 300, 350 employees. They scaled back dramatically and they were maybe 120, maybe 150 when I was working with them. They were still doing revenue at that 300, 350 employee level, with a contractor bench that was more than the number of FTEs that they had in-house. I didn't at the time realize that was a viable strategy for a 10-person shop. I just didn't think about it. Didn't hit me, didn't even cross my radar. I just thought, neat, that's a thing that a large company can do because they can keep that bench interested and active. Now where we're seeing it, when I'm having these conversations with smaller people, I have one client who's growing almost solely through contractors. Like we talked about it and we modeled it out and grabbing, a bunch of capital to go hire a bunch of people and then staffing up to like 20, 25 FTEs. That's a risk. You have to have your rev gen dialed in. The last thing you want to do is grow fast and then retreat a little bit. You can do that much more smoothly through contractors. And so he's going through and building out a contractor base, and it's frankly working really well for him. So that's one of those things where it's like, I should have seen it, but I thought that trade-off in margins was going to be too great. But it's really not, because when you take into account the utilization benefit, you can essentially trade off the excess increase in cost for a contractor with the benefit to utilization rates.
It's very interesting, right? So you mentioned how agencies and actually really everyone in our space right now is getting more specialized. And I wonder, with agencies getting more intentional about how they spend their budgets, what are some things that you're seeing when it comes to like budget optimizations? What are some smart optimization things that you're seeing from agencies where perhaps they're able to optimize their spending but not lose momentum for growth?
I think one of the biggest pieces, biggest flag, it's not green or red, but it's a flag that gets raised when I talk to an agency and I start looking at the numbers, is what they're budgeting for their rev gen investment. Like, you contrast that with what they say they want to grow. Like, they'll say, we want to double in 2 years. We want to, sell the agency in 5 years. To do that, we need to double in 2 years, and we need to double again in 5 years. And then you start digging into the numbers, and you see that they're investing like 5% of revenue in sales and marketing. And it's like, I mean, if you're really good at it and you've got a really solid Rolodex, maybe that's a thing, and maybe you can do it and crush it. But usually you have to build out some infrastructure, and that infrastructure costs budget. So I think that's probably the biggest thing, is underinvestment and under allocating budget for rev gen and sales and marketing investments.
It's very, very fascinating. Thank you for that. All right, final thought, because I know we're coming up on time. If you could give agency leaders one piece of advice for staying resilient in 2025, what would it be?
Be comfortable with being nimble. Like, a lot of we showed you, the vast majority of agencies are small. Use that to your advantage. Don't be super bureaucratic. Don't have a board of directors that you need to check with before pivoting. Like, be small and use it to your advantage and go do it. Like, if you see an opportunity in the marketplace, maybe with AI, maybe with an industry, maybe with, I don't know, a new technology that's out there, go try it out. Go hard into it. Try to build a package around it and try to sell it. Like, use that nimbleness as a superpower, not as something that holds you back.
Well, everyone, thanks for joining us on this session. A huge thanks to Nick for sharing those insights and being our resident agency oracle. Feel free to join our agency partner program and get access to our amazing agency community on Slack. It is a fantastic place to network with other agencies, share ideas, and grow together. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you in community.